It was my former boss Angela that I encountered passing through the wide hallway. I thought to myself that she was really enjoying a lavish meal, but it probably surprised her more to see me in this upscale restaurant. She asked me with a slightly sneering tone.
Being suddenly laid off must be tough, right? Besides, you have no specific skills, I guess. So, did you come here for a meal with your severance pay?
Although she was smiling sweetly, her eyes clearly looked down on me as she teased with her tone.
Found any work yet?
I've just been appointed the new CEO. I replied promptly.
What?
She looked momentarily taken aback. My name is Henry Oakland, 42 years old. I've worked for a major trading company for 20 years, and I'm aware I'm known as a permanent manager, but honestly, I'm not interested in the rat race and am fine with where I am. Doing a meticulous and steady job is my style, and I'm not good with the modern emphasis on efficiency and speed. I'm originally the type who prefers to take things easy rather than rush. Because of this, inside the company, many label me as slow or sluggish. However, I prefer to work diligently, checking and confirming documents even after completion to avoid mistakes, rather than rushing and having to spend time correcting them later. Of course, I always ensure I work with enough buffer to meet deadlines. In the end, even if my submissions are the last, they are never sent back for revisions, and I strictly adhere to deadlines. I'm not particularly outstanding in ability, but my accuracy and solid work performance have been recognized, and I've been made a manager. Being a middle manager has its own set of challenges. While considering my team members' pacing, I make sure we complete the planned work within business hours so they can leave on time, and I always try to leave at the regular closing time myself. I plan and adjust the work schedule, but of course, there are always unexpected issues. There are days when employees call in sick or cannot come for several days due to bereavement. At such times, the work is divided among the available staff. Even if there are slight deviations from the schedule, as long as we finish on time in the end, it's not a problem. That's why I always tell my team to work calmly and carefully. It might seem ordinary, but surprisingly, many people can't manage even this. Caught up in a sense of duty, despite having plenty of time, some still work overtime to finish their assigned tasks as quickly as possible. The company would actually prefer not to have people working unnecessary overtime. There are also those who take over tasks left for others to handle the next day, finishing them off on their own. While this might seem considerate, the work wasn't left behind to make others work overtime. The next day, if someone comes in to find their tasks taken over, most would be upset. Though they should be thankful. Such actions are seen as effort and kindness by others, which is the problem. The correct approach is to finish the tasks given for the day without needing to work overtime. Originally, working overtime isn't something to be encouraged, but for some reason, a part of supervisors seem to value working hard enough to stay late. Instead of unnecessary overtime or taking over others' tasks, focus on completing what needs to be done today and leave what can be done tomorrow for tomorrow. It's better to praise employees who finish their daily tasks well within their pace without overextending themselves. Yet, it's strange how being normal is labeled as incompetence. Why is being normal spoken of as if it's a deficiency? I manage my work ordinarily every day. That in itself is a challenging and praiseworthy feat. It's only recently, since a much younger woman became my boss, that I've begun to feel that not enough people understand this. Director Angela Young is a talented woman who climbed to her position in her late 30s. Indeed, she rose rapidly through the ranks as a high-achieving elite. It was because I turned down a promotion to director, but I never thought she would end up being my boss. However, having capable people above is not a bad thing. We welcomed her as our new director, recognizing her talents. Nevertheless, since Angela took over, the way we work has changed significantly.
Please let go of the inefficient ways of the past.
She said coldly, proceeding to explain the new job revision plan. The focus was on efficiency, regardless of the content. Despite humans not being machines and unable to operate without mistakes in such a rigid manner, her established schedule was meticulous and left no room for flexibility.
Angela, I'm afraid, but doesn't this schedule put too much burden on the employees?
The data shows that this is an average speed that can be managed. If you can't do it, it's simply a lack of effort, so you should just work overtime, right?
How did she even compile this average data? There was no explanation, just an order to work as instructed. Well, whether it's feasible or not, we wouldn't know unless we tried as told. While calming the dissatisfied employees, I went around encouraging them to give it a try. Thus began the hellish days. At first, everyone was enthusiastic and managed their tasks smoothly. Indeed, the work progressed quickly, just as Angela had said. However, such a sprint start couldn't be maintained every day. Once accustomed to the work, everyone settled into their own pace. I had trained the staff to work this way, but Angela wouldn't allow it.
They were able to do it right at the start. So they should be able to continue doing it that way.
She naturally demanded the maintenance of the initial pace when everyone was pushing themselves to meet the schedule.
Actually, everyone was enthusiastic at first, but it's impossible to keep exerting maximum effort constantly.
What? That sounds like laziness to me. It's because you think that way that your employees develop a habit of slacking.
My suggestions were sharply rejected her, and the schedule remained unchanged. Eventually, more employees began working overtime, and some even gave up their lunch breaks to keep working. Even if someone tried to leave on time after managing as much as they could, they had to report their progress to Angela before leaving.
You're leaving while today's work isn't finished?
I really have to attend to something today. I'll finish up the rest tomorrow.
That's not necessary. Someone else will take care of it. You can go home. You're busy, right?
With those words, the employee left with looking regretful.
Angela, that was a bit harsh, don't you think?
Why? She's going home without taking responsibility for her work.
But she said she'd do it tomorrow. It's not like it significantly affects the overall progress whether it's done today or tomorrow.
I don't know what she have planned, but I can't trust someone who prioritizes their personal life over work.
Angela said so dismissively and returned to her computer to resume working. Since she didn't leave, many employees felt uncomfortable about leaving themselves. Day by day, the office atmosphere worsened. The ongoing overtime led to increased fatigue among the staff. During lunch breaks, more people began taking naps. No one was left who didn't work overtime, and simple mistakes became frequent due to fatigue. As human errors accumulated, many lost confidence, and the office was constantly tense and on edge. The atmosphere was far from pleasant. A once calm office felt like a desolate wilderness, and it was profoundly saddening. Eventually, as expected, the number of employees taking sick leave increased. Everyone was working late and under a lot of stress. It seemed natural to me, but Angela criticized their weakness.
Adults should be able to manage their health properly.
One morning, as she made this announcement at the morning assembly, I felt compelled to respond.
Excuse me, Angela. That sounds rather threatening. If someone is feeling unwell, they should be allowed to rest without pressure, even if it's on the day.
Do you trust people who call in on the day they're supposed to work?
With those words, her eyes filled with scorn, and I faintly heard her mutter,
Idiots.
It became clear to me that she truly didn't trust the employees. Does she really think of the staff as machines or something? Working in such a tense environment, it's no wonder their health deteriorates. Angela says if they really push themselves, they can get the work done by today. It's really pushing them to their limits. This is creating a vicious cycle where they get sick from stress and start making more mistakes.
I'm not expecting miracles from you guys. I just want you to do what you can manage. Why can't you even do that?
Angela scolded the employees with a tone of complete incomprehension. Each time, it was clear the employees' spirits were crushed, and they felt increasingly inferior.
Angela, could we maybe loosen up the schedule a bit?
Why? It was manageable before, and it's always better to finish work early in case something comes up.
Angela looked puzzled by my comment.
Isn't now one of those times? There's really no need to rush, and it might be better to let the employees rest.
Okay, that's enough. I've heard enough of your excuses. It's your coddling that's made everyone here so weak.
She said with a look of disgust with a sigh, and walked away. I wondered if there was anything I could do, but soon my concerns were overshadowed by more immediate issues. That day, as I headed to the office, I noticed a stir among the staff.
Hey, Henry, is this for real?
A young employee I had mentored since their first day approached me, almost in tears.
What are you talking about?
Without a word, the employee pointed to a notice on the bulletin board. There, a document announced my dismissal. Surprised, I turned around to the sound of clicking heels with an intimidating presence.
I'm sorry this came out of nowhere. But it seems like your presence is just hindering everyone else.
Angela said, patting my shoulder as if to console me, then walked back to her office. I stared blankly at the bulletin board for a while and rushed into the office as the startup chime rang. As soon as I arrived at my desk, I was called to a meeting room, where Angela and a member of the HR department handed me my termination notice and instructed me to sign the necessary documents. After signing several consent forms and completing the procedures, the HR staff quickly checked the documents and said,
"All right, that will be all. Thank you for your services."
and hurried back.
You can clear out your desk by the end of the day. You don't need to do any more work.
Angela said with an unusually radiant smile. She must have been orchestrating something behind the scenes. I had been with this company for 20 years. To be dismissed so suddenly. I had always gotten along with the previous managers and thought the team members respected me. Yet, I never expected to be discarded so easily by the company. Feeling as if a huge hole had been ripped open in my heart, I mechanically began to clear my desk. Employees glanced over with pitying looks. Some of them clearly fearful that they might be next. 2 days after quitting, I was at a high-end Chinese restaurant on the top floor of a hotel. I was still heartbroken, but my Uncle Edward had insisted I come. Having my methods and thoughts so directly challenged had really brought me down. Finding a new job after being fired is definitely hard. Edward's offer was a lifeline.
Are you sure I'm the right person for this?
Henry, that's exactly why I want you to take it.
He reassured me, which gave me a boost. Then, I got up to go to the restroom with feeling a bit better. After washing my hands, on my way back to the room where Edward was waiting.
You must be enjoying a fancy meal too.
I bumped into Angela in the wide hallway. I thought to myself that she was really enjoying a lavish meal, but it probably surprised her more to see me in this upscale restaurant. In a snide tone, she asked,
Must be tough being suddenly fired, huh? Besides, you have no specific skills, I guess. So, did you come here to eat using your severance pay?
She was smiling, but her eyes clearly looked down on me as she continued in a mocking tone.
Found any work yet?
I've just been appointed the new CEO.
I replied immediately to her statement.
What?
She looked momentarily taken aback.
Henry, you never come back. Did something happen?
There, Edward appeared.
He perhaps was concerned by my late return.
Seeing his face, Angela was shocked.
Could it be Edward Irving, the chairperson?
Yes, I'm Edward. Sorry, but where did we meet?
Oh, yes, excuse me. I've admired you since attending the seminar you had.
She stammered, a rarity for her. Perhaps it was nerves, as she fidgeted slightly and her cheeks were faintly flushed. Usually so brisk, it was surprising to see this different side of her.
I had no idea such a lovely young lady attended. Thank you.
Edward said with a smile, causing her to blush deeply and look down. It was a side of Angela I never saw at work, and I was genuinely surprised. Thinking about it, her efficiency-first approach does resemble Edward's method in some ways. Although it is similar, his approach is much more cautious, and he doesn't burn out his employees.
So, how do you know Henry?
Edward asked, tilting his head curiously. Angela is my former boss. I answered.
Such a young lady. That's quite impressive.
He expressed his admiration genuinely, making Angela's face grow even redder.
Well, could you tell me what exactly is your relationship with each other?
She asked hesitantly. We exchanged looks and responded almost in unison. He's my nephew.
I'm his uncle.
We pointed at each other as we introduced our relationship. Surprised, she blinked for a moment before glaring at me.
Wait. What are you talking about? I had no idea about this.
Well, we didn't mention it. After all, Angela and I weren't exactly on terms to share such personal details.
So, about you becoming a CEO.
Oh, I asked Henry to become the CEO of a new company I started. I've been inviting Henry for a while, but he wouldn't give me a definite answer.
Edward explained cheerfully, unaware of the background.
Henry always said he liked his previous company, but then I heard he was fired. So, I invited him to work for our company.
So, you really rely on Henry that much?
Absolutely. Henry is one of the best students I've ever taught, and he was instrumental in transforming a toxic company back into a healthy one.
He seemed unable to hide his pride in his nephew, so he eagerly began to recount my numerous achievements, puffing up with pride at the opportunity. While he appeared delighted, Angela's face grew increasingly pale. I just watched the stark contrast between the two.
If I may ask, but what exactly makes Henry suited to be a CEO? Your methods are the complete opposite of your efficiency-focused approach.
Angela questioned. Edward looked puzzled. For the first time, finally seeing her not just as an attendee of a seminar, but as my former boss.
Well, if you only think about efficiency, Henry's methods might seem laid back and lazy at times.
Angela nodded deeply, probably something she had often thought. In fact, I often remember being told to, please try harder.
However, that's because Henry always works with plenty of margin. Henry can afford to take it easy because he plans with such a buffer.
Still, doesn't make sense.
Edward explained gently, like talking to a student facing a difficult question.
People who work too hard often think that taking it easy is bad, but that's not true.
He continued, reminiscing about his past.
I used to think the same way.
Explaining the concept of ease to Angela.
Don't you think being able to work comfortably is the highest state of efficiency?
I know, but could be one way to look at it, but couldn't that spare time be used to get even more work done more efficiently?
Angela countered. Edward's words seemed to strike her particularly hard, perhaps because she had become focused on efficiency after attending his seminar.
Yes, that's true. But that's only if you view efficiency in terms of work and time alone.
That's all. What else do we need to think of?
Edward slowly shook his head.
The highest efficiency is deeply connected to employees' motivation. It means working in a state where they feel comfortable and happy.
He explained with a gentle smile. Angela tried to respond, her mouth trembling slightly, but ultimately, she couldn't find the words and looked down, appearing frustrated yet somewhat sad.
It seems like you're really troubled. Has something happened at the company?
Edward asked her softly, his tone soothing.
Well, I was the one who fired Henry.
Hearing that, he looked surprised, then smiled.
You got it. I should thank you for that, but it must have been hard for you afterward.
He said with a wry smile. Angela bit her lip and teared up. Seeing that, I was taken aback. I had thought my firing might have been a scare tactic, and the employees would be anxious, but it seems the current situation at the company is more serious than I imagined.
Angela, has something happened at the company?
It had only been 2 days since my dismissal. It seemed too soon for such drastic changes.
Exactly. After all, you were the one who had been nurturing the staff in that office.
Angela let out a deep sigh, then began to explain.
I thought that if you were gone, everyone would work harder. Many relied on you, who gave me ideas after all.
I see. She had believed that by firing me, she could foster independence among the employees.
But it backfired. After you left, everyone's motivation clearly dropped.
She continued with a somber expression.
You had been a greater support to the staff spirits than I realized. Honestly, I was shocked. Everyone lost the will to push through and succeed.
The schedules that they had been managing to keep up with while I was there are now completely unachievable. Angela tries to lead by example, working longer than anyone else to support the staff, but even that is barely enough, and they just look exhausted when going home.
I noticed they were tired before, but I thought they'd get used to it. Plus, when you were with us, they would talk about going out for drinks after work.
I remember that well. Tired as they were, they wanted to vent a bit with close colleagues over a drink. I was often invited, and sometimes I would be the one to suggest it, especially if I noticed someone particularly down. But now, those conversations no longer happen, and everyone just quietly goes home after finishing their overtime work. Angela's initial schedules are no longer being met, overtime doesn't improve efficiency, and the lack of vitality worried the management.
I had no idea the company used to be a toxic workplace.
She said, turning to me with a remorseful look.
I always thought overtime was normal, and I couldn't relax unless I cleared visible tasks.
When she first joined the company, she was shocked. How relaxed everyone seemed. She worried that this pace wouldn't allow them to handle sudden emergencies. She had harbored this dissatisfaction for a long time, watching colleagues leave early while she diligently focused on her tasks. Becoming a director confirmed to her that her approach wasn't wrong, prompting her to implement those bold changes. At first, everything seemed fine, and apart from occasional complaints from me, there seemed to be no issues. But once I was gone, she was shocked by the sudden drop in motivation.
Some of the longer-serving employees might be reminded of the dark days when this was a toxic workplace.
While she was strict about schedules, she didn't commit injustices like refusing to pay overtime or denying paid leave. She probably truly believed in her methods.
Angela, it's not my place to say this anymore, but please trust your employees.
At my suggestion, Angela tilted her head curiously.
Finish today's work today, and what can be done tomorrow, do it then. It's okay to handle tasks leisurely when there's room to breathe.
But what if there's a crisis?
Yes, in times of crisis, that's exactly when you can see their true capabilities shine. Therefore, allow them to take it easy when possible, of course, without disrupting the work.
My words seemed to enlighten her.
Even in a crisis, they are capable enough to handle it. Please have faith in them.
I urged her. Hearing that, she hurriedly said,
I'm sorry. I forced your dismissal thinking it was all due to your leniency. It didn't work out.
Then, standing straight with a quiet resolve, she continued.
I'll start over. I'll discuss it with the team, adjust the schedules, and apologize for what happened with you.
Oh, you don't have to worry about me that much.
I do have to. There are still many employees who look up to you.
She insisted, which made me a bit bashful.
Mr. Irving, I'm glad we met today. Henry, I'm really sorry again. Good luck with your new job. I'll do my best too,
Said a smiling Angela, and I realized for the first time that she was quite attractive. She had always seemed irritable and angry, so I hadn't noticed before, but it looked like she might change for the better now.
Let's both do our best with a new mindset.
I replied, and we exchanged a firm handshake before heading our separate ways. Years later, as the CEO of the company Edward asked me to lead, I finally felt at ease in the role. I thought following orders was easier than giving them, but I found running a company not so bad after all. Seeing the business from a different perspective and managing the whole operation has become increasingly enjoyable. The company rode a wave of success, and our performance soared. Now under the umbrella of Edward's large corporation, we're producing results I'm not ashamed of. Recently, we even started doing business with my old company. This has led to more encounters with familiar faces, and some employees who admired me have even transferred over. When I met Angela again, she had successfully turned her department around, but she said with a resentful look,
As my team members heard that you were the CEO of the new company, some have moved to your place.
It left me not knowing whether to feel sorry or pleased. Pondering that, she suddenly smiled and said,
It's okay, I'm going to make sure the new employees admire me, and I'll be that kind of boss.
Her words were challenging, but her face was no longer stern. She seemed to be enjoying her work.
My goodness, that sounds tough. But it's great to see you enjoying your work.
Yes, I was desperate before, but it reminded me of why I loved this job in the first place.
She seemed completely at peace, likely to become a boss much admired by many employees. As my company continued to grow and eventually went public, big changes also happened at my former company. They appointed their first female president, and it caused quite a stir. When I met Angela Young, the president again, she said with a radiant smile,
I'm glad we can finally compete on the same level.
Same here. Please go easy on me.
We exchanged warm handshakes, reconnecting after a long time.